people know the truth when they hear it, and they smell untruth when they see it or hear it. So they may not admit it most of the time or a lot of times, but they know it. So be truthful. They can look at board members and say, this guy's not spending an hour a month. They're spending a lot more time than that. So be truthful about it, because it's true. It does take some commitment.
HOA Insights, common sense for common areas, exists to help all 2 million volunteer board members nationwide have the right information at the right time to make the right decisions for their future. This podcast is sponsored by 4 companies that care about board members: Association Insights and Marketplace, Association Reserves, Community Financials, and Kevin Davis Insurance Services. You'll find links to their websites and social media in the show notes.
Hi, I'm Robert Nordland of Association Reserves.
And I'm Julie Adaman of Adaman Inc. And this is HOA Insights, where we promote common sense
For common areas. Welcome to episode number 29, where we'll be talking about the job description for a board member. How do you describe the task ahead to someone asking about serving on the board? And that's what we'll be addressing today in the next few minutes. In case you haven't had the chance to listen, I want to encourage everyone to check out our last episode, number 28, which is a great discussion with Tom Connolly, a consultant serving associations, about the different motivations behind people becoming board members. And if you missed any of our other prior episodes, take a moment after this one to subscribe to this podcast on any of the more popular podcast platforms. You can also listen from our podcast website, which is www.hoainsights.org, or watch on our YouTube channel. And if you have a hot topic, a crazy story, or a question you'd like us to address, you can contact us at 805-203-3130 or email us at podcast@reservestudy.com. So, Julie, as we so often do, let's start our discussion today with an audience question. Pam from Dallas asked, how do we describe an open board position attractively enough so people will run for the position, but not too scary and, let me add, truthful enough about what time and energy it'll require?
I say be truthful. If you don't tell the people the truth up front, if you tell them it's an hour a month, they're going to hate you, and they're going to tell other people that you guys lied to them, and then no one's going to want to be on the board. But what I would say is that be honest about how much time it takes, but I would emphasize the positives, because there's a lot of positives in being on a board of directors. I mean, you get to be a part of, steering the community in a positive direction. You get to, hopefully, and you get to have your voice heard, and as well as you get to be another conduit between the board and homeowners. And if you're a new person to the board, you likely have friends within the community or acquaintances within the community who maybe never had a board member to socialize with or be around. So they will be able to ask you questions, or they will be able to actually know a live board member and realize that, oh my God, they're just regular people trying to do the job. The last thing I would say is that make sure your community has a good experience prepared for this person, or as good experience as it can be. Number one is make sure that your board meetings are well run, that they don't last 3 hours when they should last 40 minutes. Make sure they're not full of vitriol. And just if your community is positively moving forward, people want to be a part of that. They want to be a part of something positive. So all of those things together, but one last time, be truthful about how much time it's going to take. But there are positives and tremendous positives to being on a board, and I'd emphasize those.
And right in here, focus on the rewards. There are a lot of rewards. It does take time, and I think we've spoken previously about kind of the chemistry or the character of the board and the association. It starts at the top with the leadership. And if you're truthful to the other board members, and you're truthful to the committee members, and you're truthful to the homeowners, and if you do it regularly, lather, rinse, repeat, then the homeowner is going to be more comfortable, and you're going to have that situation where it is more inviting. You have nothing to hide, and that's an amazing place to be. Wow, got talk about nothing to hide. We're talking about job descriptions.
Yeah, exactly. Last about nothing to hide. It's like, and I think we had talked about this the last time you and I did a podcast, Robert, is that people know the truth when they hear it and they smell untruth when they see it or hear it. So they may not admit it most of the time or a lot of times, but they know it. So be truthful. They can look at board members and say, this guy's not spending an hour a month. They're spending a lot more time than that. So be truthful about it because it's true. It does take some commitment.
Yeah. But then there's this whole, in addition to that, I think when you think about it, like you talked to, it opens up a circle of friends. The new board member from unit number 13 knows 12 and 14, and the people maybe above and below them. And so when they are walking their dog or taking their garbage out and someone says, hey, I hear you're on the board, tell me about this. All those 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 15 minutes, they add up. And so you end up being a point man to communicate and do some incredibly positive things to an entirely new section of the homeowners that the board never had penetration to. I still like this, knowing the truth, and we can speak candidly. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The reason we thought we'd have a dog park open by September and it's not going to happen. It looks like it'll be November, a 2-month delay. The reason is this and this and this. Having the truth there at quick disposal makes fear go away. It eliminates confusion incites distrust, all those kind of bad things. And so getting a new board member on can be so healthy for the association for, untold many positive reasons.
Exactly.
So what do you say? Do you say hours per month? Do you say this or that? And then how different is it for a 300-unit twin tower high-rise compared to a little 50-unit quiet planned development that has just an entry monument sign?
Well, that's a crapshoot. I mean,
okay.
I mean, way a long time ago when I was managing as a portfolio manager, these 30 years ago now. But sometimes the smallest communities were the ones that took the most time. And I think if you ask most people who are in the management side of the industry, the small communities often will take more time. And I don't know why that is, but oftentimes they do. And also it may depend on whether you have a management company and a manager who is competent, both company and manager is competent, who takes a lot of this day-to-day stuff off of board members. But then again, sometimes there's just a lot to do. And I think so that really comes down to community and whether or not it's busy or whether or not it's less busy and the board doesn't have so many hours to put into it. All usually has to do with, number one, what's going on in the community. Are you in litigation? Is there a big, reconstruction project going on? Or are you doing some retrofitting? Any kind of thing like that I count as busy and that creates a lot of customer service issues or questions, that type of thing. And then it's also how well administered is the community by the board. And I'm going to come right back to what we always do. Communication, transparency is everything. Again, truthfulness. And sometimes, believe me, I know board members, you kind of feel like this, there's arrows being slung at you all the time. And if I talk more, I'm just going to get more arrows. Well, yes and no. It depends on how you're talking and it depends on what you're communicating. So I will always err on the side of more communication, not less.
I like that. I think there's so much power in communication that, like you say, it's not that you give people more opportunity to attack you, but I think it's a great shield where it can deflect so much potential criticism and that confusion and the distrust and the uncertainty. What is the board doing with all our money? I'm paying this much. I remember seeing an interview right after Champlain Tower South where someone was saying, the board has taken my mother's money for all these years. What did they do with it? I was like, running an association is expensive, and you need to be on top of that. You need to communicate that. So being a board member is important. It doesn't have the same job descriptions that, if you want to be an attorney, you need to go to law school, you need to pass the bar. If you want to be a firefighter, there's physical fitness requirements. What are the requirements, fundamental requirements for being a board member?
Well, typically you have to be an owner. That's not 100% though, but you have to be an owner. And the second one is, I don't know, upright and breathing. It's willing. You're willing to do it. It's, talking about how you get on boards like that. I have a whole program I do about this for board members. And one is, how did you get on the board? Well, you left the room and were voted in. There's always one. The meeting was around cocktail time. You had one too many and decided you volunteered. There's another one.
How hard can it be? I'll do it.
It's crafted that second margarita. Everything's great, Yeah. So anyway, but really that's it. I will say that all board members, no matter what reason they get on the board, and there's a whole bevy of reasons. Many have an agenda, others, are sure the management company's charging too much, or, but most board, even people who have their own personal agendas, mostly board members want to do the right thing. Most of them want to. Many may be uninformed about what actually is going on in the association or how associations operate. They are a business. They're a corporation, nonprofit corporation typically. And they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And especially if communication isn't good, when communication isn't good or there's none or it's conflicting communication, you get all these rumors that start. And once again, they grow exponentially at cocktail time around the pool, and the rumors just can explode. Look, all you got to do is look at our entire country or locally, look at your own governments. And when any section of our federal government, state government, local government, school boards, whatever, when there comes out either no information or conflicting information, the first thing all of us as constituents of those entities go is like, whoa, wait a minute. I have no trust whatsoever in what's going on. And a homeowners association is just a microcosm. It's a little more, it's a true direct democracy, a direct republic. How about that? As opposed to a direct democracy, but it's the same thing. So if you are, again, not truthful, not forthright, not forthcoming in communication and have a real strategy for it, can be very difficult.
Yeah. And as you said in prior conversations that we've had, it's so quick to react. It's like a little petri dish where you can test something. And so while in city, state, federal government, it may take time for a policy to filter out, if it even gets to you. If you raise assessments or if you close the pool, that's an instant reaction and you get tremendous feedback. And if you haven't made it clear that the water is going to be shut off in building number 2 beginning 2:00 on Thursday, this date, boy, if you haven't made that clear a couple weeks in advance with reminder notices approaching that time. You've got, why did that happen? What's going on?
Yeah, and it's everyone assumes the worst immediately. So that's, not everyone, but a good portion of them will assume the worst immediately for varying reasons. That's a whole nother half-hour conversation. And we could talk about this for hours, Robert, but they'll assume the worst. And as a board, I know as board members, you're like, oh my God, I'm a volunteer. Why do they assume the worst? I'm just one of them. Because the truth is, it's human nature, and being a part of a board, you're going to have to deal with it and manage it. And by managing it, I mean, what are we going to do to stop or to mitigate that aspect of human nature that they're going to assume the worst? Well, we're going to communicate early. We're going to communicate often. We're going to send out reminders. And then even if the 1 or 2 people who didn't get the memo, all those 7 times you sent it out, that's only 1 or 2 people, not 25.
And hopefully when they're walking the dog or taking the garbage out and they say, and they're grumbling about the board and and someone else will say, oh, well, didn't you hear the reason the gate is not working is because they've ordered a new one, and that's coming next week.
Yeah, it should have been. Did you get emailed? It was in your email yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I don't read that. And I don't want to say shame them, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're right. But actually, you're right. It's not shaming. It's just a matter of emphasizing. So in management world, if I was the manager of that association and someone said, what do you mean my water's off? And you would say, well, did you receive the notice? No, I didn't receive the notice. And typically in the management world, there's software that keeps track of everything that goes to all the owners. So you say, but we sent you notices on this date, this date, this date, and this date.
Yeah.
And it's emphasis that you guys actually were doing your job, the management on behalf of the board, both were doing their job, and someone just didn't get the memo because they didn't want to. And maybe next time they'll actually read their email more often than once a month, or look at what was sent to them instead of just hit the delete button because it came from the HOA.
Well, I'll get back to job description. We talked about you need to be, you actually don't always need to be, depends on the governing documents, a resident. You need to be there, typically an owner. Sometimes a spouse is okay.
Well, I was going to say, so don't forget during the development phase, the developer typically has some employees that sit on a board. And
Right.
So if those documents are not, they don't specify that it's developer. I mean, there's things that has to be developer representative, but sometimes the documents aren't that well written. And so it allows people who are not homeowners to be on the board. One of the last boards I sat on, if you've listened to these a few times, you've heard me talk about it. I had to resign because I'm moving out of the area. But those documents, I could have sat on the board another year or another 6 months because you didn't have to be a homeowner. I declined, but I'd been out there a couple of years. I'd already put my time in and a lot of work. So,
Yeah, well, that's another aspect. Okay, typically you want to be committed to the association, owner, resident. You are moving. You need to be alive and functional, but can we go down that path? A board member doesn't require the fitness of some physical jobs, doesn't require the analytical knowledge of some professions. It requires you to be you and bringing the common sense that you have to the board, to the conversation the board's going to have. And I guess my bias or my stereotype is there's so many boards that get focused on the minutia of running the association, this and that, and they forget or neglect what you've stressed so many times, the communication aspect. And just being a communicator, and that can be spouse of the treasurer, the president themselves, as you are walking around the association, communicating as you're putting a notice up somewhere, spreading the good news that we are getting this. As I like seeing on the roadway when I'm slowed by construction, I like seeing the orange highway sign that says your tax dollars at work. It's like, oh, good. The board is doing some good things. Finally, yeah.
Something I can see.
Yeah. But being involved at the association, caring enough to want to spend some time and not being in fear that it's going to be a horrible thing. And maybe what we're looking for is the people who do care enough, and populating the board with people who care. Isn't that going to do wonderful things for the association?
Yes, typically it does. And I think most people they do care, who want to be on a board. I think that's whatever the documents say, you have to be a homeowner, resident, or homeowner, right? And then you also be willing to spend the time, because again, as we say, it's not just an hour a month or 2 hours a month. That's not it. So be willing to spend the time, have the interest, or as you like to say, Robert, the curiosity in being a board member and what actually goes on. It's not just a great place to warm a chair, because if you think you're going to warm a chair, you're going to end up in charge of a committee and be a committee chair because they're going to need somebody, and boom, you're that person. And if you don't want to take on that type of responsibility, I wouldn't bother to be on a board. I think the next thing is you have to play in the sandbox well with others, because everyone on that board is going to be very different from you. You may all be in the same situation in life right now. Maybe you're in an over 55 active adult community, maybe or you're not. You're in a community that has lots of kids, and you have kids at home, and there's playgrounds and parks and all that type of thing. You may be in that same station, but I guarantee you are absolutely different from those people around you. I think, as we've talked about before, if you're a board member and you're an entrepreneur, you're going to have a very different way of looking at things as opposed to a board member who's an insurance adjuster. One is very risk averse, and the other is a risk taker by nature. So you have to be able to mesh with these people and understand where they're coming from. I don't mean in this horrible, long, drawn-out thing, but just understand they're not going to think like you. They're going to have different perspectives, but you're still going to have to come together and move the community forward by moving forward as a board.
Yeah. Can we add compromise then to that? Because the board
Compromise has to
moves-
be a part of it. Yep.
it
Yep.
moves forward as a committee.
Move forward as a board.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What'd you say? Maybe I missed what you said.
I use the word committee, and you're right. The board is a board. Committees support the board with special projects.
Yeah. So, so that person could have been in charge of a committee. I think I know where you went back to. But regardless, I mean, yes, there is compromise. And on that compromise, let me talk about one more thing that happens all the time with boards. So let's just say typically boards have 5 members, and some have 7, some have 9. The biggest I know of has 29. Oh, I would kill myself. Well, it's a huge association, but 29 is just way too unwieldy. You can't do it. Anyway, most have 5, thankfully. And so whenever you're going to have a divide there somewhere along the line, the board is not going to agree on a way forward. 3 are going to think one way, 2 are going to think another in a 5-member board. Okay. And just like Patton said, if everyone's thinking alike, someone's not thinking. And you're going to have times where everyone is not thinking alike. You're not in lockstep, and you don't need to be in lockstep. But if you were one of the 2 and 3 decide to move forward on something that you don't agree with, and I'm going to assume here, because 99% of the time it's not unethical, it's not immoral, it's not illegal, it's just something you disagree with, and the board makes that decision, the vote is 3-2, and is moving forward on this path that you as one of those 2 people don't agree with, don't go off and badmouth it. You have to move forward as a unit. I mean, and if people say, well, did you vote against that? And you said, yes, I did vote against it. I didn't agree with it, but that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to support it moving forward because we're already on this path. It does me or the association no good to badmouth it or be negative from here on out about that project or whatever it is. And it doesn't do any good. Doesn't you do any good? Doesn't you do you any good? Doesn't do the community any good at all.
Yeah. I'm busy writing notes here, and I'm looking forward to more of this. But looking at the time, we need to take a quick break and hear a short message from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Kevin Davis, the president of Kevin Davis Insurance Services. Our experienced team of underwriters will help you when you get that declination. We provide the voice of reason, someone who will stand by you. Our underwriters bring years of knowledge to our clients that can't be automated by technology or driven by price. As a proud ANWINS company, we bring true value to your community association clients. We are your community association insurance experts.
And we're back. Well, during the break, Julie and I were talking about more and more details, but I think we need to focus and get back to kind of the big picture. What is really the job of a board member? What are they trying to accomplish, Julie?
Very briefly, I'll tell you that the reason I actually put together, and it will be published, folks will let you know when that is. Actually, by the time you've seen this, it will have been published already, the September edition of my publication called the HOA Newsline. You can find it on my website. We'll do that at the very end. However...
Well, no, right now, Adaman-Inc.com.
So it's adaman-inc.com. You will look under HOA Newsline, click that tab. And one last thing I'll tell you that. Do you want to do the board member education now, Robert? Want me to just go with that?
Sure.
Okay. So also, for all of you board members, new board members, even if you're old board members, or as I like to say, classic, as I am a board member, I have online courses for board members, and it's 4 hours worth of material. You can access it through my website, again, which is adaman-inc.com. Click on the Learning tab, and that will take you to the educational platform. And it's everything about being a board member that you ever wanted to know, and done in a very practical manner. It's kind of the street knowledge of being a board member, how things are set up, the language of the industry, the language of being a board member, governing documents, et cetera, et cetera. And it's very entertaining, I will tell you, since I did it. And you will find yourself laughing out loud a few times, because if you've been around a little bit, you know this is a funny business.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The purpose of this podcast is to encourage and equip, and we'll do as much as we can in 30 minutes, but we will point you either through our conversation or through show notes to other resources that can be of great, that really be a big benefit, some advantages to your association. But let's get back to the podcast here. Board member responsibilities.
Job description.
What are they? Job description, yes.
Well, let me because we're not going to have too much time to get this, but let me take the big picture look right here. And I have it written down. Sorry, folks, I'm going to read it here. But for a board member, the summary of being a board member is this. If this is the top of your job description, it's to be and act as a trustee. And a trustee listen to this, is an individual person or a member of a board given control or powers of administration of property with the obligation to do just that. So that's what you have, the powers of administration of property. That means hard property, and that means financial property as well. So that's what you are as a trustee, as a board member. You are responsible for money and common elements that belong to others as well as you. And the next big picture thing, in our industry, we've been saying this forever, but a lot of board members never hear it. And your job is to ensure the preservation, protection, maintenance, and enhancement of the common elements of the association, and to manage the association as the governing documents intend. That is your charge. And we can drill down forever on this. There's things you need to set policy, and there's good financial management. And I think we'll do another podcast on that, because obviously we could take a lot of time talking about that. But in short, as a board member, it's your job to preserve, protect, maintain, and enhance. That doesn't mean to keep assessments as low as possible so 7 more people in the community can afford to live there. I know that sounds harsh, but, people do have to move out of places that they can no longer afford or maintain. I mean, I'm moving out of the house I've lived in for 22 years because my husband at our stage in life, we've got no kids at home and we're downsizing, and we just don't need this big property and don't want to pay for it anymore. So that's why we're going. Life does change. And so if you're maintaining and enhancing and preserving and protecting, it does not mean that you are keeping, this always comes to this, it drills down to this every time, keeping assessments artificially low.
The reality may be that it is time for, your job is not to maintain Mrs. Johnson, that wonderful, nice old lady in Unit 72. Your job is not to preserve her in the association. Your job is to preserve the association. That means with inflation and high cost of insurance and everything like that, the assessments need to go up.
And that was actually perfect, Robert, is you're not preserving an individual person or person's ability to stay in the unit that they're in at whatever stage in life they are. Yours is to preserve, maintain, protect, and enhance, not just for now, but into the future. And that means for everybody, for the corporation as a whole, and not just the owners today, the owners in the future. Does it sound like a big responsibility? Well, actually, it is. And I say, don't be a board member and take it lightly and think I'm going to only be on 2 years and I've done my time. Which actually does happen. But understand there is some gravity to what you're doing. And it could be, again, tremendously satisfying. I sat on 2 boards at once just recently, tremendously satisfying, and you can do a lot of good. But understand your bigger picture role. And I think we'll end up discussing some of these in a future podcast for you all.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that if the prior boards have done their job and they have policies that help guide the association forward and have due process for architectural restrictions, architectural guidelines, reserve policy, investment policy,
collection policy, landscape policy.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, all
everything.
of these things.
If they've done their job and they have those documents, then you have a framework to work with, in addition to the governing documents, in addition to the bylaws and those kinds of things. And we just did that with National Reserve Say standards. There was a clause in National Reserve Say standards that you are at risk of losing your IRS credential for prolonged absence from the office. And
oh, really?
Nowadays, there's a lot of us that don't go into the office. And there's a lot of reserve professionals that work from home. And there's sometimes it's just being the one to observe that, this needs to be tweaked. Now with technology, we're doing online meetings, which means that something changes about in-person meetings. So looking at it and being the human, being the concerned, caring board member that can just say, there's a great policy. We just need to tweak it a little bit because now we're in 2023.
Yeah. Exactly. And now that you brought up that bigger picture part of it and talking about policy, so as trustees, as board members, as trustees, there are a couple of really big picture things that you need to have first. And Robert hit the nail on the head about architectural policies. Let me just go, I got a couple things right here. It's one of your main jobs is to set policies because it's the primary method that sets the direction and the tone for now and into the future of the community. So that means you have big picture policies, which are things like adopting, and this is a whole nother subject, adopting a policy governance model of administration for your community. That would be a big overarching type of policies. And that provides for the board to set those other policies, which would be like architectural guidelines and landscape guidelines, or things that come up on a regular basis. So everyone at every one of these issues is treated equitably now and in the future. Not that they can't be tweaked when they need to be, but it's so there is some method of organization that is linear, that can be traced and tracked, and can be known to be fair to every person who applies or every person who asks about this particular thing. So there's no favoritism, there's no picking on people, that type of thing. And then there's obviously, it goes all the way down to financial management policies, reserve study policies. I consider that part of financial management. And then administrative policies, like, when will people get their phone calls returned or their emails returned, all of that type of thing. So again, folks, it starts at the top with the big picture, and it drills right down. And each one of these things shows how well your community is governed or not. And it's not hard. You just need the knowledge. And you don't know what you don't know. So, and that's what we're trying to give you here.
Yeah. Well, Julie, I look at the clock and we are thin on time here. So I want to thank you. It's always great talking with you. We can go so much further on this topic and so many other. We are doing this, again, to encourage and equip. So I don't want to scare anyone with making it sound like there's so many things to do. Job of a board member, for all of you who know, is just doing your best, showing up, and helping the association move forward. Julie, any closing thoughts before we close?
Well, just to reemphasize what Robert just said, yes, it's showing up. It's wanting to do the best for your community, not for yourself and not for just a small group of people. And if you want more information on it, again, let me just tell you, head to my website, Adamen, that's ADAMEN -INC.com, or Google me, you'll find it, Julie Adamen. And go to my website, click on the education page, and you will find access to board member courses for yourself or for anyone who's new to the board. I think they'll find it very helpful, and I'd love to hear your feedback.
Fantastic. Well, we hope you learned some HOA insights from our discussion today that help you bring common sense to your common areas. We look forward to having you join us for another great episode next week.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, common sense for common areas. You can listen to the show on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or subscribe on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel. Check the show notes for helpful links. If you like the show and want to support the work we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing you can do is to engage in the conversation. Email your questions or voice memos to podcast@reservestudy.com or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that sponsor this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast do not constitute legal advice. You'll want to consult your own legal counsel before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.